Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Push with Nick and KP. I'm KP. Nick is here in attendance with me once more because today we're going to be going through our NXT recap for this week. This is the 22nd of July edition from Houston, Texas. Same places where Monday Night Raw was the night before. So, how about we get started with going through all of the recap, talk about everything that took place across the course of the night, and we would kick things off with our opening contest, which would be a 4-on-4 mixed tag team match. This will see the Culling taking on the team of Hank and Tank, as well as Zarya and Sol Ruka. Yeah, quite a fun match to kick things off here on NXT. Lots of back and forth between the two teams, lots of shenanigans going on throughout the course of the contest. Ultimately, it would come down to a situation where Tatum Paxley and Zarya would be in the middle of the ring, and Tatum would be past her doll that she'd sort of had at ringside throughout this entire contest. She actually sat it down on the announcer's desk at one point earlier on in the match. She'd be past the doll, and then just as she sort of come to terms with what she's been given, the lights would suddenly go out, and we would have Dark State sort of appear in the crowd like they have done in recent appearances, just sort of like sporadically placed around, sort of camera going from one to one to one to one type thing. And then suddenly, the lights go off and then back on again, and we have Zarya being rolled up by Tatum Paxley, which would ultimately just be the end of the contest. So logically speaking, you would imagine that possibly Tatum had used the doll to try and sort of inflict some punishment upon Zarya. It looks like Zarya was holding her face after the matchup as well once it had finished. So perhaps maybe a strike to the eye or to the face in general with that doll could have maybe caught Zarya out, and that was obviously enough for Tatum to capitalize and get the victory on behalf of the Culling. So, yeah, quite an interesting opening contest here. Dark State just sort of randomly appearing once again. But I suppose in this case, maybe they have highlighted in previous weeks that they are looking to go for the tag team titles. So, yeah, maybe that's really what this is all about. Maybe that's what they're focused on. That's maybe what their drive is to get involved with this particular matchup. So, that would be my understanding of the situation, but obviously we'll have to wait and see exactly where this does go. Going on into our next segment of the show, we would have Fatal Influence, which will obviously see JC Jane, Jasmine Nix, and now our double champion, JC Jane, who is now not only the NXT Women's Champion, but also the Knockouts Women's Champion from TNA. She would defeat Masha Slamovich at Slammiversary last weekend. And she was basically feeling the absolute energy and the hype in herself. She would go on to say how she runs women's wrestling now that she has 2 titles. And then she said that she did it all by herself. Interesting this point because Fallon would go to sort of say something, but then would choose not to. Just sort of notice that little hesitation there from herself. But JC would continue to go off on her recent success, and she basically say that she's making history and getting into the history books, which is a cliche, but she is genuinely doing that. So she references the cliche, but she's aware of what she is actually doing by holding 2 world titles, respectively speaking. Lash Legend, she would come on down shortly after that, and she would basically congratulate JC on taking her moment at being at the top of the division. But she would warn JC Jane that she's going to spiral down fast, and that because of Lash's recent performances, her showing off at the Women's Evolution PLE that she had a great contest in, she's the one that's going to step up and to get in the face of JC and help her with that spiral downwards. She talks about how she can go toe-to-toe with Raw and SmackDown superstars and that she can take one of JC's titles. She believes in herself. She knows she's capable of doing exactly that. She's not the only person interested in the conversation, though, because Jada Parker would come on down moments later, and she would basically just essentially follow up with kind of similar thing that Lash Legend was going for, building herself up, and just sort of like trying to get in the face of JC Jane. This would be quite an interesting moment next because JC would sort of be fed up with what Lash and Jada both have to say. She would order Fatal Influence to attack them and lay them out. Fallon and Jasmine, they don't really go for it at first, though. They sort of refuse. Before then, JC just goes straight in for a punch, and then Fallon and Jasmine get involved. So, yeah, quite a little interesting little dynamic there between the 3 of them. There seems to be those like really small teasers still coming on here, which have seemed to be for a while now, especially between Fallon and JC. But yeah, just the fact that they purely both just flat out said no, and they didn't even move. Yeah, that was quite interesting. That's quite telling. But ultimately, in the end, Lash and Jada clear the ring. They have a brawl with Fatal Influence, and eventually it gets to a point where they stand tall at the end of the matchup. At the end of the segment. Moving on then into our second match of the show, we would have Jasper Troy going 1-1 with Ricky Saints. This would be quite a hard-hitting contest. Obviously, this goes back to the recent NXT PLE, where we'd have a little bit of an interaction between Jasper and Ricky during that NXT North American Championship match, the Falls Count Anywhere contest. But yeah, that would sort of transpire into this particular matchup here, setting the scene for this one. And yeah, it'd be quite a fun match. To be fair, there'd be a point where both men would work their way over to the ramp, and Jasper Troy would actually put Ricky Saints through the ramp, sort of like part of it, just like literally falling right through. And as he's down there, Jasper Troy goes for a senton, connects with it, just inflicting more punishment upon Ricky Saints. And the referee's counting along here. Jasper makes his way just back into the ring, just in time to beat the count, but ultimately Ricky Saints is still on the ramp, so he loses the match via countout. So yeah, Jasper Troy with a countout win, but like a decisively done countout victory, I found quite interesting. We don't see those very often at all, like in terms of this particular style. So yeah, they didn't want Ricky to be pinned, but they did want him to be laid out. Unable to get back into the ring. So yeah, I thought that was quite the interesting, quite a kind of unique finish. Like I say, we just don't see it very often. So I guess it's a little bit of a change of ways to end the match, which is quite nice and quite refreshing, I guess. But yeah, what a win for Jasper Troy though, absolutely huge for him, probably his biggest win since being on NXT, I would say. But yeah, I quite enjoyed the match. To be fair, it's quite fun. We would then go into a promo with Trick Williams, who is still the TNA World Champion after successfully defending against Joe Hendry, and Mike Santana at Slammiversary in that triple threat contest. Trick would basically talk about his successful defense of that title, referring back to last week on NXT when Team Undertaker from LFG were backstage and he got up in their faces. He would say how they sort of snitched on him on the Undertaker. They snitched on Trick Williams to the Undertaker before calling himself out, as well as calling him soft, basically. Undertaker would head down pretty soon after this, saying that we've got a dead man walking right here, clearly sort of like looking down upon Trick Williams, and he would say that Trick has everything except for respect. He's got a lot to his game, but he's just missing one particular part. He was basically referred to back when Trick used to be the NXT champion and how he is now, sort of like the difference of personas, that he's sort of gone down a different path to get there. And he would say that he used to have that dog in him. That's a very common phrase, passed around wrestling at the moment. But now, not anymore. He doesn't have that trait anymore. Taker says that Trick's attitude will be his downfall eventually, and that it's not a matter of if he'll lose his title, it's more of a matter of when it will happen. Taker says he tries to teach his LFG team to not have that attitude, but whilst he's sort of saying this, Trick says that he doesn't care about the LFG team at all. He says nobody on Taker's team is a star, like Trick himself is, before saying that how nobody is like him at all, like full stop. Taker goes on to say that Trick is too light in the ass to step up to an OG like The Undertaker, before then saying that if he needs to, he will make Trick famous. Trick goes to hit Taker literally moments after this, but he gets a chokeslam for his efforts, and Undertaker stands tall to end the segment. But yeah, kind of a wild situation. We got Undertaker and Trick Williams having a face-to-face in the year of 2025 at NXT. Who would have known? But also in this first half, the Cullen getting a big victory at the start of the show, Nick, as well as the Fatal Influence promo blending in with Lash and Jada getting involved in the title picture once again, and then ultimately Jasper Troy defeating Ricky Saints. What did you make of the first half of NXT?
Yeah, the first match at the mixed tag, I guess I should say, was pretty good. A ton of action, obviously, and a theme for the first half of NXT is something I haven't seen in a while. I think that's fair to say. The lights going out and Tatum using the doll of sorts. I don't know if that was just coincidental. Lights going out with Dark State appearing, or if the doll actually contains some sort of powers. I think you could certainly play into that with how the ending was, and obviously Zarya holding her eye after the match. I It's been a while since we've had something like that, so I'm interested, and I will pay attention to it. I don't typically love the supernatural stuff, but um, if they can make it work, then I'm here for it. But yeah, that was a well enough ending, and I think with Dark State eventually, as I'm sure I've said it 100 times, eventually with the new faction, you have to get them something to kind of solidify their legacy, and I think the tag teams Hank and Tank would be a good start for them. The JC Jane promo with Fatal Influence I thought was good as well. Nothing crazy. I think the main point being here to further the tension between the faction. As you mentioned, we've seen that for quite a while. Obviously, Jasmine Nix always being the focal point of that, and also, or I think it was, I can't remember if it was earlier or later in the night, where they mentioned that. I think it was later. Jasmine goes, you can go after Jada Parker, and then Fallon could go after Lash Legend, and said something along the sorts of, well, we know that I stand a better chance than you. So just kind of furthering the friction between them, and kind of downplaying Miss Parker as well, which I don't love that. But yeah, I think the overall point of that was to further the friction here and prove that JC Jane, even though she is now JC two belts, does still have has a bigger target on her head now more than ever. So I imagine Lash Legend and Jada Parker will compete soon enough for that number one contendership, which raises some questions on some other women, but we'll get to that here in a bit. The next match with Ricky Saints and Jasper Troy. Yeah, this was a really good contest. I'd say close to PLE worthy. Definitely hard hitting in that spot with the ramp. I thought that was very unique and something I'm not sure I've ever seen something quite like that. Obviously, the setup here is a little different, smaller venue being NXT, so I'm not sure they could pull that off at some places. And I do assume the spot was planned. And even if it wasn't, all the more impressive. But yeah, this was a great match, and Ricky really took some abuse here, and I think this was very much needed. Obviously, I didn't agree with Jasper Troy losing to Javon, so this very much kind of puts him rights the ship, so to speak. So I very much like this match and like the result as well. And props to Ricky Saints for taking all that offense. Then yeah, Undertaker. It hurts me a little bit inside to see Undertaker because he every time I see him on screen he looks a little older. I think they hide it on LFG a little bit. You can't really tell, but seeing him stand and walk around and I don't know, give the bright lights on him, it just looks a little older and it hurts my heart a little bit. But still, nonetheless, he cut a promo like no one else. It was great. And the choke slam on Trick Williams very much deserved and looked good as well. So yeah, I think clear that with the way Trick Williams beat Joe Hendry and Mike Santana, he is living up to his heel expectations and worse now than he ever has been as a heel. So yeah, some pretty good matches from Summiversary 2. If you haven't had the chance to check that out, please absolutely do. But yeah, pretty good first half of Raw or NXT, wrong show. But yeah, pretty good first half, and like I said, lots of stuff we hadn't seen before, so that's always appreciated. Keep it fresh.
Yeah, we do like things to be kept fresh. Just keep things a bit more interesting so that we don't really see the same stuff over and over again. There is a bit more that we'll talk about regarding that a little bit later on the show. But let's go into our next segment of NXT. And we would see in this particular segment, we see a match between Blake Monroe and Ren Sinclair. This would be the in-ring singles debut of Blake Monroe since coming over to NXT. Yeah, I mean, I'd say pretty much your standard debut. Nothing crazy, but a good enough job to sort of get people interested and to showcase what you've got. Um, Ren Sinclair showing that she's able to excuse me. Ren Sinclair showing that she's able to sort of get in there and mix things up. With someone like Blake Monroe. I think anyone really doubts the ability of Ren Sinclair. She's pretty consistent all the time. But yeah, just this was obviously all about showcasing Blake and starting her off with a victory, and that's ultimately what she did. Um, she'd hit a double underhook DDT, sort of like something like a Dirty Deeds or a future shot DDT that we've seen in the past, and she would lay Ren Sinclair out with that maneuver, and that'll be enough to secure the victory and get the 1-2-3. But yeah, Ren Sinclair, I thought that she sold the finish really, really well. And it was just a nice little matchup just to get sort of things started for Blake Monroe in singles competition. Um, the main focus point here, though, is obviously Jordan Grace. She is not particularly happy with Blake Monroe. Going back to Evolution and the screw from Blake, and Jordan would be barred from the arena for the evening. She wouldn't be allowed in. Ava would tell her to go away, like to not get involved. Jordan basically telling Ava straight up to her face, okay, yeah, but I'm still going to. And apparently Ava just was like, okay, fine, and walked away. But that was earlier in the night. Lo and behold, who comes out after the contest? Jordan Grace storms through the crowd and, squares up to Blake Monroe. They have a little bit of a mini brawl type thing. There is security there involved as well. And ultimately, Blake Monroe gets a headbutt in on Jordan Grace, and then she hits her DDT, the same move she used on Ren Sinclair, onto a very well placed steel chair at ringside, and just slamming down Jordan straight headfirst into that steel chair. So that takes Jordan Grace out, and Blake Monroe able to stand tall at the end of the segment. But yeah, quite a I guess quite a good way of sort of continuing this feud between the two women. Jordan obviously showing a different side to herself since the situation happened with Blake Monroe, a much more aggressive physical side and more driven and focused, perhaps you could say. But yeah, just maybe sort of going in a little bit too gung ho, and here comes Blake Monroe with a very well timed headbutt and DDT. So yeah, advantage Blake Monroe at the moment, I would still say. And I'm definitely keen to see where this goes. The next segment is honestly probably one of my favorite segments in NXT. Well, in NXT this year, probably in a long, long time as well. It involves Ethan Page, and he is basically talking about the NXT North American Championship and how he brings more pride than all of the previous Americans to hold the North American title put together. He says how he's the greatest North American alive. After talking about his history of growing up and coming to America, before he then throws the North American title outside of the ring, just launches it to ringside, before unveiling a new North American championship, which actually has the Canadian flag on the strap. He goes on to say how much better Canada is than America. He would refer to the likes of the food, the women, even the air that they breathe. And he would say how proud he is to be a Canadian citizen before asking everyone to rise for the singing of the Canadian national anthem. Ethan Page legit tries to sing the national anthem for Canada, and it is hilarious. This whole segment up until now is funny because he just completely like he is all ego. That is the gimmick for Ethan Page. But this is probably the most egomaniac version I've seen of Ethan Page since he arrived in NXT. And it was a joy to behold. It was absolutely fantastic. Everything he was saying, the crowd were getting really riled up. He was just getting more and more reactions from them. They were getting louder and louder, booing him more. Everything was working. It was exactly what needed to be done during this particular segment. But as the national anthem is attempted to being sung by Ethan Page, Santino Marella, the man in charge of TNA right now, he would come on down and basically would tell Ethan that he has a very big mouth. He would talk about himself being Italian and that he lives in Canada as well, but unlike Ethan Page, him and his family, they're very different to him. He calls Ethan Page a bumhole bully. Before then, basically saying that he has class and dignity, which Ethan Page does not. Santino would go on to say how it should be him challenging Ethan Page to a match next week because of the dignity and class that he holds upon himself. Ethan says, let's do this right now. He sort of like turns around, takes his jacket off, and by the time he's turned back around to confront Santino Marella, he's got the Cobra out and ready to go, which sends Ethan scrambling outside the ring, and that'll be the end of the segment. But this just was an absolutely hilarious segment from Ethan Page, especially. He did such a great job here of riling the crowd up and just being so crazily maniacal. It was quality. Really, really good segment. I've had a great time watching it. It was a lot of fun, and it was refreshing, which we've already sort of touched over, already in this podcast. Then we go into our main event. This will be a triple threat match. We would see Obafemi defending his NXT Championship against both Josh Briggs and Yoshiki Inamura. This would be quite the interesting matchup. We've obviously seen a little bit of disarray between Yoshiki and Josh in the past couple of weeks. Goes back to Yoshiki's recent NXT Championship match where Josh Briggs will get involved. And then last week, a little bit of a confrontation between all three men, setting up this triple threat. And that would sort of transpire into the match itself. There would be a lot of situations where ultimately, at first, it would be Josh and Yoshiki looking to try and sort of take the offense to Obafemi, but ultimately it would catch up. It would sort of it would eventually become too much, and they would start costing each other or like pinfalls and opportunities to win the title. And at that point, friendship goes out the window, and they just eventually just decided to make it a proper triple threat. And yeah, they took the fight to themselves then as well. Whilst doing so in all of this situation, Obafemi would look to like take advantage of that, and ultimately in the end, he would lay out Josh Briggs, and he would go for the cover and get the win and defend his NXT Championship. But yeah, it was it was a pretty fun match. I quite enjoyed it. Wasn't the longest one. I think it was shy of like 9 minutes or so. So it was pretty fast paced and quick, but it was heavy hitting. It was hard hitting, and it was good. It was a good, well paced matchup. So yeah, I found it quite fun. Overfemi winning is the correct result, I think, for me personally. As to who's going to take the title off of him, well, maybe we have Overfemi's next challenger lined up with our very final part of the show. We would see Javon Evans and Undertaker backstage, and Undertaker would be offering a little bit of mentorship towards Javon Evans, who had actually been throughout the course of the night making lots of notes and sort of like trying to plan his next move and what he wants to do next. Yeah, he wasn't really convinced about anything up until this point, but then Undertaker would basically say, "Look, that's what you should be doing next," and he basically referring to the match that was just on the screen, which is Obafemi, Yoshiki, and Josh, essentially just sort of pushing Javon Evans in the direction of the NXT Championship picture once more. So could that be the next challenge? Possibly it could be. That's what I interpreted from the situation anyway. Javon looks like he's not sure what he wants to do, and this could be, his opportunity to do exactly that. But Nick, fun second half of NXT in my opinion. What did you think? Obviously going from Blake Monroe's singles debut, impressively done, and then obviously the fallout with Jordan Grace afterwards. The Ethan Page segment, I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And then, that triple threat main event for the NXT title, Obafemi still the champion. What did you make of it all?
Yeah, I thought the Blake Monroe, pay attention, Booker T, I know you listen, Blake Monroe and Ren Sinclair match was good enough. As you kind of mentioned, was a typical debut match. One thing I will credit Ren Sinclair for doing, possibly even too much, is her ability to sell is next level. Like I said, maybe too much sometimes, but she really makes her opponent looks good. I think that's one thing that Ren Sinclair brings to the table more than most. But yeah, Blake Monroe, I hadn't really seen her wrestle too much. Obviously, we've seen her in the tag matches and such, but seeing her in a one-on-one, even if brief, it appears that she does have what it takes. It appears that she has the complete package, and why people were, clamoring for her to come into WWE. Someone like myself who doesn't watch much outside of WWE, that was a good little glimpse into what she can do. So yeah, I thought that was great. And then the Jordan Grace, obviously far from done with getting her revenge on Blake. So we'll see where that goes from here. I think JC clearly has a couple more than a couple of competitors next up on the list. Ethan Page and Santina Morella, the director of authority of TNA. This segment was just great all around. As you kind of alluded to, the belt itself with the Canadian flag strap, I thought that was incredible. Ethan Page is just everything he touches turns into gold. And the same can be said for Santino. So very much looking forward to where they're taking that from here. But I've said it before and I'll say it again. Ethan Page is ready to go to bigger and better things, I think. So, while he's still here, providing entertaining segments like this and something very new as well. And I'm a sucker for a new belt as well. Then the main event, the dynamic in this was kind of weird because obviously Inamura and Briggs were working together again, but then they weren't. It's strange. It's I don't know. I've said it before, just not the biggest fan of Briggs, but I will say that this was probably one of his better matches, I think. And the match itself, you kind of alluded to, it was quick, was kind of quicker than I thought it would be. But I think Inamura not getting the pin here, putting that on Briggs instead, I think is the right call. I think Inamura still deserves his rematch, so whenever that may be. And then then Javon Evans getting the go ahead from Taker. You know, I thought all of those segments with Javon tonight were pretty entertaining. His interactions with different people of the NXT roster, I thought that was pretty good. Javon clearly something special, and getting the nod from the Undertaker certainly doesn't hurt anyone either. So yeah, overall, I thought this was a great NXT. As we both kind of said many times, very filled with things that were new and things we hadn't seen either recently or or ever. So props to NXT. Definitely kicking it up from last week, as Raw did as well. Overall rating for this one, I gave it a 9 out of 10. Very, very entertaining.
Yeah, it was very, very entertaining for sure. There was some really good moments throughout the entirety of the show. I think that we say this a lot about NXT generally speaking, but everything always seems to be for a reason and to be moving in the right direction, and they're just so consistent with that. And I think that um, this was another classic example of exactly what we've just referenced. 8.5, yeah, I mean that's a very very great rating. I think I would probably give it a 9 out of 10 to be honest with you, just because personally there was nothing really on this show that I didn't like. I think everything was good. There were no downsides for me personally. A lot of things moved forward, going in the right direction, and especially with that segment with Ethan Page, I thought it was absolutely fantastic and one of my favorite segments, in recent NXT history. So, just absolutely loved the show. Thought it was fantastic, and yeah, really, really big fan of everything that went down. So yeah, 9 out of 10, very strong show, and it was great to see. Really, really happy with everything that went down for sure. But regarding NXT recap, guys, this is basically all we've got to say on this particular episode. I just want to say thank you very much to everybody for tuning in and listening in to what we had to say. If you liked what you heard, then please hit a like on the video and subscribe to our channel to keep up with future releases coming forward. We've got some SmackDown recap coming up later on in the week, as well as other things going forward as well. Let us know in the comments what you thought, whether you liked or disagree with anything that we said already here today. And we'd love to hear your thoughts, whatever they may be. But for now, this has been The Push with Nick and KP, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Take it easy, and goodbye.